Today on Nerd of the Rings, we're mapping the complete travels of Middle-earth's most adventurous hobbit, Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo was born on September 22nd, 2890 of the Third Age, to his father Bungo Baggins and his mother Belladonna Took, making him the grandson of the Old Took. While he was known as a respectable young hobbit, he also had an adventurous streak. During his childhood, he would attend the famous parties thrown by the Old Took, during which he would be enthralled by the stories told by Gandalf the Grey, hearing about adventures and dragons and goblins and princesses and the unexpected luck of widows' sons. After his parents' deaths, first Bungo in 2926 and Belladonna in 2934, the 44-year-old Bilbo inherits Bag End and comes to be known as a mostly respectable and admirable hobbit. However, over the next few years, Bilbo starts leaving his house for days at a time to go on excursions, where he would meet strangers on the road, such as dwarves traveling in the area. When Gandalf comes to the Shire on April 6, 2941, he is pondering the idea of enlisting Bilbo as the burglar for the Quest of Erebor. He arrives only to find that Bilbo has gone off once again, this time because it was the Elven New Year, and he had hoped to come across elves traveling through Erebor. On April 25th, Bilbo is back at home when he receives a visitor, Gandalf, who attempts to convince him to go on the quest. The following day, he is interrupted by a company of dwarves and the Grey Wizard, creating an unexpected party. Despite his insistence on being like his respectable Baggins' father, his Tookish side wins out, and Bilbo agrees to go on the adventure. He travels to the Green Dragon on the morning of April 27th and joins the company, who then set out on their journey. They travel east through the Shire to the Lone Lands east of Bree. On May 16th, they pass Amansul and continue east to the Trollshaws, arriving on May 29th. This same day, Bilbo and the dwarves realize Gandalf is missing. That night, they encounter 3 trolls who capture the entire group. Fortunately, Gandalf returns and keeps the trolls arguing until dawn, when they are turned to stone. From the troll horde, Bilbo receives an elven dagger, which he would carry for the rest of the journey. Their path leads them through the forest and toward Rivendell. They arrive in the House of Elrond on June 17th, where they would spend the next couple weeks. On Midsummer's Day, which comes between the end of June and beginning of July, Thorin's company leaves Rivendell, continuing on their trek to Erebor. Over the next 16 days, they make their way up into the mountains, where they take shelter in a cave. That night, they're attacked by goblins. Bilbo wakes and notices the ponies disappearing into the back of the cave. His shout gives Gandalf just enough warning to evade capture. Bilbo and the dwarves are taken to Goblin Town, where Gandalf kills the Great Goblin. In their escape, Bilbo is separated and becomes lost in the caves. On July 19th, he discovers the One Ring and meets Gollum, with whom he plays a game of riddles. As Gollum chases Bilbo through the tunnels, Bilbo inadvertently slips on the ring, becoming invisible and evading his pursuer. Bilbo follows Gollum to the eastern door of the Goblin tunnels and exits the mountain. Shortly afterward, he reunites with Gandalf and the dwarves, but keeps the ring a secret for the time being. Soon after, the group hears the howl of a warg, and they are pursued and trapped in the trees. The great eagles come to their rescue, taking them to their eyrie, where they rest for the night. On July 20th, the eagles fly them to the Carrick. The company climbs down and travels to Beorn's house that afternoon. Bilbo, Gandalf, and the dwarves spend the following 2 nights in the home of Beorn, before continuing their journey on the afternoon of July 22nd. They travel for 4 days, watched over by Beorn, coming to the west edge of Mirkwood on July 26th. Gandalf leaves the company there while Bilbo and the dwarves press on. They travel through Mirkwood for over 3 weeks when they see the campfires of the elves on August 21st, causing them to leave the path. After 3 attempts to infiltrate the elf camp, the woods is plunged into darkness, Thorin is captured and the group is separated. After falling asleep, Bilbo wakes to find a spider attempting to wrap him in webbing. Bilbo fights the spider off, naming his sword Sting after its first kill, and goes on to save the dwarves as well. The following day, August 23rd, the group is surrounded by elves and taken captive. Bilbo once again uses the ring to disappear and evades capture. For the next month, the dwarves would be prisoners in Thranduil's halls. All the while, Bilbo remains in hiding, sneaking around the woodland realm, attempting to find a way to break out his friends. It wouldn't be until September 7th that Bilbo finally discovers where Thorin is being held. 2 weeks later, on September 21st, Bilbo discovers that the main gates are not the only way out. That afternoon, he makes his move, springing the dwarves, and they make their way down the forest river in barrels. Just 1 day earlier, Gandalf and the White Council had attacked Dol Guldur, driving out Sauron. Over the following 2 days, Bilbo and the dwarves make their way down the river until September 23rd, when the company arrives in Lake Town. There, they are welcomed by the Master. Around October 6th, Thorin requests supplies for the dwarves' trip to Erebor. 3 days later, Bilbo and the 13 dwarves embark on the final leg of their journey to the Lonely Mountain. They take boats upstream for 3 days before reaching the northern shore. They take their ponies the rest of the way, arriving at the mountain on October 17th to search for the hidden door. The following day, they discover the door, where they spend the next 4 days before the last light of sunset on Durin's Day reveals the keyhole. That day and the next, Bilbo makes his 2 trips down into the lair of Smaug, leading to the dragon smashing the secret door and attacking Lake Town, where he would meet his end. 3 days later, Bilbo, Thorin, and the dwarves finally learn of Smaug's death from the ravens. As the dwarves fortify the front gate of Erebor, the survivors of Lake Town and the elves of Mirkwood make their way toward the mountain. On November 9th, they make their claim to Thorin for a share of the treasure within. Over the next 12 days, Bilbo sees the dwarves prepare for battle, and Thorin succumbs to dragon sickness, becoming obsessed with the treasure. During this time, Thorin gives Bilbo the famous mithril shirt. Roak the Raven brings word to Thorin that Dane is bringing over 500 dwarves from the Iron Hills and is quickly approaching. That night, Bilbo delivers the Arkenstone to Bard and Thranduil in hopes of avoiding war. The following day, November 22nd, Bard and Thranduil reveal their possession of the Arkenstone to Thorin. A day later, as the men, elves, and dwarves are preparing to fight, the army of orcs and wargs arrives, and thus the Battle of 5 Armies ensues. Bilbo would miss the majority of the conflict, as he is knocked out by a falling stone while invisible. On November 24th, Bilbo awakes and is brought to Thorin on his deathbed, bidding farewell to his friend. The next day, Thorin, the king under the mountain, is laid to rest in Erebor, and Dane is made the new king. 2 days later, on November 27th, Bilbo and Gandalf bid farewell to the survivors of the company and begin their return journey. They retrace much of their route to Erebor, traveling alongside Thranduil and Beorn, before accompanying the Skin Changer to his home west of Mirkwood. On December 27th, they arrive at Beorn's house, where they spend the Yule holiday. They would in fact spend much of the winter there, finally leaving Beorn in April of 2942. 10 days later, they reach the very pass where the goblins had captured the company months earlier. As they make their way toward Rivendell, the master of Lake Town falls to dragon sickness, dying in the wilderness with stolen gold. On May 1st, Gandalf and Bilbo reach Rivendell once again, where they spend a week. They leave on May 8th, retracing their previous path, before finally arriving home in the Shire on June 22nd, where Bilbo would once again live comfortably in Bag End. Over the years, he would be the subject of much intrigue in the Shire, due to his disappearance, unexplained wealth, and because he would appear not to age over the coming years. He would also receive odd visitors, like the Grey Wizard and Dwarves, such as in 2949, when Balin and Gandalf come to Bag End, where Bilbo learns of the prosperity of Dale and Erebor, and Balin's pending mission to reclaim Moria. Bilbo was also known to leave the Shire from time to time on journeys, perhaps shorter ones like he took prior to his grand adventure. In 2989, Bilbo would embark on another kind of adventure, as he would adopt his young cousin, Frodo Baggins, who had been orphaned 9 years earlier and was being raised by his Brandybuck relatives. Frodo would refer to Bilbo as his uncle and would become Bilbo's heir. In the coming years, Bilbo would begin writing his memoirs, what would one day become the Red Book of West March. In 3001, Bilbo would celebrate his 111th birthday with a great party. After his grand disappearance, Bilbo takes with him Sting, his mithril coat, and his book as he leaves the Shire. He leaves Frodo many of his remaining possessions, including his home and the ring. A group of 3 dwarves who had helped Bilbo with party preparations accompanies him as he leaves his home for the last time. Bilbo travels east through Woody End, where he greets Gildor and his group of elves near Woodhall. Bilbo then travels to Rivendell once again, and as he would later tell Frodo, after a rest, he goes with the dwarves to Dale, visiting the location of his greatest adventure one last time. Bilbo makes his final journey back to Rivendell, where he would enjoy the twilight of his years. He would remain in Rivendell working on his book, translating Elvish stories and writing poetry. 17 years later, Bilbo would see his adopted heir once again, as Frodo brings the One Ring to Imladris. Bilbo attends the Council of Elrond, going as far as to offer to take the ring to Mount Doom. However, this journey would be undertaken by Frodo. In an effort to help Frodo on his quest, Bilbo gives him Sting and the mithril coat. With the destruction of the One Ring the following year, Bilbo begins to show his age more and more. As Arwen tells Frodo, Bilbo begins to look ancient for his kind. Gandalf, Elrond, Frodo, and the other hobbits would stop by Rivendell on their way back from their journey. While the 4 hobbits would return to the Shire, Bilbo would remain in Rivendell for the next 2 years. Finally, on September 29th, 3021, Bilbo travels with Elrond and others to the Grey Havens. Now 131 years old, he is officially the oldest living hobbit in history, surpassing the Old Took. With his cousin Frodo, friend Gandalf, and some of the great elves of Middle-earth, he sails into the West. There, he would live out the rest of his mortal days in peace, before embarking on the final great journey. As always, a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Gail Elizabeth, Jim Limber Davis, Jay Breakfield, Timothy Park, Sky Carcass, Zetrock, Grand Strategy Nerd, The Dark Haired One, Salim Rahman, Wyland, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description and purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.